Welcome everybody. It's our next interview today in a good conditions, no in car, but at home finally again. And I have very big pleasure to invite and to welcome Mario FALCAO from United States. He's now in Dunkirk, if I remember correctly, the city. It's in the west side of the New York State. And it's a big pleasure for me to have him today because he's not only fantastic player, but also fantastic person, and we know for such a long time. So I'm so pleased, and I want very much to welcome Mario today to be with us and to share all his experiences and memories. Welcome, Mario.
Thank you, Jana. Thanks very much. It's an honor. It's also a great privilege to be able to talk to many people and eventually to exchange some ideas and communicate and talk about harp, talk about music, talk about events, talk about gossip, anything that we would like to express that relates to the harp. And that's an extraordinary document. And right away, I wanted to thank you for your wonderful idea, which I think as time goes by, we'll see how terrific this is for all the harpists, also for the musicians and for music. And so thank you, Jana. And I hope I have some good stories, and I will try to keep the stories that children can hear.
Okay. Sure, I'm sure you have wonderful stories. As every time we have been together, it was wonderful, funny, and really wonderful time. So I just want to start, of course, very officially about your appearance at the World Harp Congress in Vienna, because you were not performing there, unfortunately, but you were presenting, as it's also in the banner written, you were presenting the harp, which was memorized harp, electronic harp, or whatever. Just explain it, please, a little bit.
Right. In the 80s, and a harp maker in France called Joël Garnier, he was a very interesting person and liked to experiment. And he kept hearing from all harpists how difficult it was, the pedals. And we have all these pedals to change. And what shall we do? Can't we find something else or something? And Joël started to experiment and to think about something that would make the use of the pedals easier. And which is not a matter of being easier, is that the pedals in some ways, musically, they hold us back. We cannot do a lot of chromaticism on the harp. It has to be very well put together to really work well. So what he came up with was a system that used an hydraulic tubes that connected the use of a pedal into the mechanism of the harp up on the neck of the harp. Oh. And this was actually very complicated, and that ultimately was what made not the whole things really succeed, because it became very problematic. Mm-hmm. But the way it worked was that so we're talking about early 80s, late 70s. So there were already computers. So he attached a computer that we put underneath the music stand.
Okay.
And on that computer, you had the name of the pedals and the notes and the octaves. Mm-hmm. And before you were to play a piece, you would program your pedal sequence. So the pedals were on the computer, and you still had pedals on the harp. The harp was still built with the usual 7 pedals, but you only needed to press on one pedal that was connected to with the computer. And then you could change all the pedals, and you knew that you wouldn't make any mistakes with your pedals.
Mario, you can't imagine. I was really thinking about creating something like that, but I have not known that it has existed already.
Oh,
And I thought, like, if I would create this, how it has happened when someone starts to make mistakes in playing and the pedals will be still set up in the correct way, then you can't do it. What was how they solved this situation? Because of course it can happen that you make mismemory, and so.
Oh yes, yeah.
So how it has happened when the pedals were still going the same way, but you were not able to play the correct notes?
Yes, well, the notes you still had to play right. But your pedals were always right, even if your notes were wrong.
But you had to catch the pedals then, right? You could not.
So the pedals were all programmed before you started, and you only used one pedal, which was the computer pedal, and it changed the right note.
Wow.
I remember that one of the pieces that I don't know if I used it in Vienna, but I used it because I made a few presentations of the harp here and there, and the computer the piece that I thought it was very good that everybody knew. I would play the Au Matin of Tournier, which of course has a famous sequence of pedals, which in a way, they're not terribly difficult, but they are problematic. So it was a very good example to say that you could always have your pedals right, even if your fingers were wrong. Anyway, there was the basic idea of the memory harp, which he called memory harp because the computer was like a memory of your pedals. But it was more, I think first he thought of the term computerized harp, but that didn't sound very good, and memory harp, it's almost a poetic name.
That's a fantastic idea. I just wonder why it did not appear like to continue this kind of, coming out with this project.
I really don't know exactly what happened. As you know, Jacques was a collaborator, and Jacques is now the owner and in charge of Camac. And I think it already ended before Joel passed, because Joel is passed at least like almost 15 years ago or more. So I'm not sure. I don't think it worked, and there were no sales or very few sales, and so therefore, but it was a wonderful idea. It was also a product of the time. There was in the 60s, 70s, and even up to 80s, there was a great tendency to experiment with things, including the music that we played. We played the Crown of Ariadne, and we played the Sequenzo of Berio, and there was in the repertoire. These pieces now seem to somehow to have disappeared almost. And but the spirit was open to experimentation, to bringing new ideas, and it was very exciting and very good too. I also, before I forget, have to follow. He also was experimenting with composite materials to build the harp. So even, I don't know, if I don't want to misinform or say something wrong, I think there's a few parts on the Camac there are made out of, I think the column itself today, it's made out of composite material, not just full wood, not like the ordinary harp. And but I'm not sure. I hope, and if I made a mistake, Jacques, forgive me. But I know he actually built harps that were all in composite wood and composite materials, because he was that kind of a person, mind. He wanted to experiment. He wanted to go forward with things. And that was very exciting. And
absolutely. I remember that in Vienna, actually saw Kamak for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember that it was very light harp. It was very extremely light because it was made not from the wood. So it was made out of some different material. And that's why it was so special, that it was really absolutely very light harp comparing to the others. So I remember all of that as well. And this your presentation there, it's so interesting. And of course, people will see the video afterwards, so they will see you how you were talking about this already there. But there was another player, and unfortunately, because he was not mentioned in the program, I could not even mention him in the program. Could you tell me if you remember who was that harpist who was playing there?
I thought on the program it was another player, but he was presenting the electric harp of Salvi.
That's
not the memory harp.
That's true, yeah, because this was the Salvi presentation.
Salvi, there were two things on the same session.
Absolutely, yeah.
Right, and but it's been a while. I can't remember.
No problem, because this what in Salvi it was really the electric harp, because
right.
they were doing with the computer, that they were like combined the sound of the the computer and the harp, which will be seen, of course, at that. But you were talking before that, so it has been combined by. But there was no, unfortunately, mention the name, because it was something added into the program. It was not printed in the program. So I apologize to the player that I could not recognize who was him. So.
Me too. I can't remember really.
Maybe after we will see, maybe someone will recognize the player. So
right, yeah.
Have you had any memories except these ones from Vienna first, and then of course I would like you to explain everything from the past, because you were also presenting in the other congresses before and after. So if you can tell everything about all these paths which you went through.
Can I say something? I've been to all congresses.
Super.
and mainly one of the main reasons is that I'm actually a member of the board, and still am the member of the board. And I was a member of the founding committee, so I'm kind of connected forever.
You are the part of the harp and of the harp congress, harp board.
And the other thing is that this is a way of seeing the world. Because we've now have had congresses in 1, 2, 3, 4
continents.
Yes, North America, Europe, Asia, and Australia. So it covered a lot of different people, different things, and it's quite remarkable in a way how you've been to all of these places and seen it. So
tell us the memories from the very beginning, because you were already in Holland when it started in the Harp Weeks.
Yeah, my connection with internet, because I was born in Portugal and went to school in Portugal, and then at that time it was very advisable for musicians that really were very serious about their careers to go abroad and get a different perspective and learn more. And I had some connections. Some of my teachers knew about FALCAO, and I was able to go and study with her, not for very long, for about 4 or 5 months. But I went there in 1963 when in 1963, I was a prodigy. I was only 4 years old. No, I'm kidding. Can I get here?
Absolutely would agree with you. You are such a charming man. Don't worry.
No, and so I had the great privilege of studying with her. She was a remarkable teacher, a wonderful musician. She always had and talked about music. Foremost and to start with, and that's a lesson that in itself that's very important. And And the extraordinary thing is that it was the beginning of a foundation that she started called the Edward von Beinum Foundation, which Edward von Beinum was the conductor for many years of the Amsterdam Concertgebouw Orchestra. And I think she was the harpist, and they were friends and all. And then when Mr. von Beinum passed, she started forming this a foundation for the help and support of young musicians in general and harpists specifically. So they bought a 17th century palace on the canal that runs, Holland is all canals, water, from the canal that goes from Amsterdam to Utrecht. And in there was this beautiful palace, more like a big house, long, big house, from the 17th century, with a small hall. And that's where we actually, so when I went to study with her, I was in that environment. In other words, the whole complex was the palace itself with the hall and some rooms and classes. And then on either side, there was I still remember the name Orangerie, which apparently is where they kept fruits. But in that day, they built rooms, and the people that were study there stayed in those rooms. And across on the other side of the there was the house where Fear lived. So she was there all the time. And we had the lessons there. I always remember we had always 2 lessons per week. And then also it was an extraordinary experience to live there, and then to pick up the train, go to Amsterdam, walk around, walk back. Train back, but it was just 20 minutes, So and at that time there was just 1 or 2 other musicians there. In fact, not harpists. I was the only harpist. Then there was a viola player and someone else, but it was an extraordinary experience. And that's where the first harp weeks took place. It was in this palace with a hall that sat between like 40 to 50 people, no more. And that's actually where we played when we had little concerts. And the whole atmosphere was just extraordinary. As an aside, I just wanted to make this, the town right across from the palace was called Breukelen. Now, Breukelen is actually the name because the Dutch were the first ones to come to North America around New York. New York was Dutch to start with before the English. So that's where the name Brooklyn, which many of us know, comes from the town across from Kweekhoven in Holland.
Unbelievable. That's fantastic.
Yeah, it was a remarkable time. And then I attended 2, I think at least 2 harp weeks. And one of them that was an extraordinary experience was the first time that the Russians, this is during the Cold War, okay? It's a different thing. The Russians were coming. And of course, it was Vera Dulova, and she always brought 1 or 2 students. And the student that came with her was Moscovitina. And she still plays, and he's a well-known harpist, but she was very young, still a teenager. And I still remember what she played, because we were all like, how did she do that? She played the Chopin Impromptu Caprice on the harp, and in the West, it had never been heard. Nobody knew that it could be done. So I still remember that.
Absolutely.
And then Veredulova played the recital in the end. You know, it was extraordinary. But the other thing that was also very extraordinary and unforgettable is that at that time in Amsterdam, it just happened to be there Khachaturian, the composer, and the cellist, wait a minute, Rostropovich, which was a very famous musician in the 60s and 70s and 80s. And all. This is the 60s. And they were there and they came to hear her recital. And this is a small group. You know, it's just 40 people, no more than that. And it was a remarkable experience to remember that these people were there. And of course, I was a little bit young, you know, and so it was really quite, and it was, I think anybody that was there during that time will remember what happened.
I must tell you that Fia must have been really very exceptional musician and lady as well. Because I'm still cutting the videos for the last days of this worldwide online harp congress. So today I came to the video which will come on the last day, which is the panel discussions when Fia is also giving the like advices to the young people what they should do, how they should look at the music life, how they should prepare them. She's such a not only kind lady, such a really clever and so wise lady. She was giving so wise, really advices. But all the people from that panel, and I must say that she was also telling what you said now very quickly. I don't want to speak; it's your interview, but that she was telling about the big musicians, that she was learning from them, and that's exactly what I think that we all agree with it. But she said it so clearly and so fantastically that it's really the biggest school, not to listen always the harpist, but to listen the violin, the piano, so that we can really grow as the musicians as well. So she was fantastic.
Yeah, no, it was, I was very lucky having been born in Portugal. I mean, the education was fine and I had good teachers at the beginning, but then having that experience, which really opened a lot of things for me. And but in terms of fear, give me a minute, please.
Absolutely. I would really like to ask also, Mario, the harp weeks. We are talking about them quite often. Yes, I remember that as well.
You were there, right? No, you were not.
I was not there, but this I remember. It was somewhere, maybe it was in Vienna also, this kind of poster, because I remember that.
This is the poster for the first Harp Congress, which was in Maastricht in Holland. But what I would like just to say, just to continue what you just said, there is just a few words of fear. And she says, may all soloists play wonderful, and may we have a time of friendship and understanding, which is really important. But first of all, let us think of the aim of this Congress in '83. And then in quotes, she says, the future of the harp and of young harpists.
That's beautiful.
So this is printed here. Yeah, me too.
Unbelievable beautiful, really. And
yeah, very simple. And she was just really straightforward. And
absolutely.
Yeah.
And the harp weeks, they were every 2 years, right? They were not every year.
No, the harp week were every year.
Every year?
The harp weeks were every year.
Wow, fantastic.
Yeah.
So it was before '83, because '83 was the first year of the World Harp Congress.
Okay. So what happened is that she organized all this, I think, for almost 20 years. I think they started in 1960. And would you allow me to go before 1960?
Absolutely. You were 2 years old, boy.
That's right. No, A lot of harpists from that time, that generation, they say that it all started, all this community of getting together with harpists and listening to each other and learning from each other. It all started with the very first harp competition in Israel, which of course you know very well. And this was organized by a man that we sometimes should remember the name. His name was Zevi Propus. He was not a musician or a harpist, but he felt at that time that Israel needed something cultural in music to happen there. And of course, as an image, what's the image of the harpist? King David. And all the, especially the medieval symbols of King David, he's playing the harp. Mm-hmm. So he decided to organize the very first harp competition, international harp competition, which was in 1959. And guess who was there? Marcel Grandjani, Carlos Salcedo, Pierre Jamet, and many other famous names. Personally, my old teacher, because I came to America to study at Eastman, and I started with Eileen Malone, and she was a wonderful teacher, and she was also there, and many other well-known harpists of that time. And so that was also, and apparently, I hope I'm not making up a story, but it sounds good. And Fia said that at that time she felt like I needed to do this. I needed to have a meeting with harpists and students, bring the students to hear each other, because the nature of playing the harp, in a way, to start with, is a little bit on your own. It's solo. It's very much on your own. And you need to broaden your horizons and your musicianship. It's to play with others, to know what's going on. You know this so much better than many people. So she decided, she got together after 59 with someone that she knew or respected very much, which is Maria Korczynska, that was in London. And she organized, and I think it was 1960 then, she organized the first Harp Week, which was not in Quakehoven yet. I think it was in a different place, but that I'm not quite sure of all these things. But it's interesting how this all connects, because, can I go on?
Absolutely, please go. It's so fantastic. I'm just like mute because I'm so only swallowing all your words. It's fantastic.
So she continues organizing this with Maria Korczynska, but Maria Korczynska was in England and she was not part of the organization. It was all done by Fia. I mean, she actually did all the little details. And you also know this very well, organizing meetings, because you did one of the great congresses in Prague. And so she felt like she needed someone, and Maria Korczynska had the name and the reputation, and because Maria Korczynska she was born in Russia, and she also was one of the first teachers of the very right after the revolution. She was still there a little bit of the Russian Revolution in 1917, and she was, but after that she didn't stay very long in Russia. She stayed only a few years, and then she immigrated with her family to England, and then she lived the rest of her life in England and taught there, had wonderful students and so on. So this was how the Harp Week in a way started, and went on for about 20 years. because in 1980, by then I had gone back and participated in several harp weeks in the late 70s, in all of them, and I was usually doing a lot of contemporary music, and because I felt an affinity and interest with that more than anything else, and I was even doing a little bit of teaching in that, and also so it was Fia, Maria Korczynska, and then in the early mid-70s, I think, and early 70s, Suzanne MacDonald became part of the group and became the third teacher there, and it was wonderful to have her there. And actually, I still remember very much. She would always give a little master class about technique and all that. It was a wonderful experience, and so it created all these people, which are now mythological beings for the harp, all together, and we would all meet there every year. I mean, at least for a while. But then in 1980, Fia said, "This is it. I can't go on." I mean, by then, Maria Korczynska died, I think, in 78 or 79. I'm not sure. So when Fia was getting a little bit elderly, and she didn't feel like she had. And so we were there in that 1980, and she said, "This is it. I'm going to finish this activity." And then we all said, "Wait a minute. It can't disappear. This cannot disappear and go on." So that's when a lot of us took steps to start then the World Harp Congress. It took about 2 years to get things kind of running and going. But then in 1983, the very first Congress was organized, and it took place in Maastricht, which is a southern city of Holland, and where Fia was living then. And she actually taught at the conservatory also. But by the end, she was retired and so on. But and that's how the World Harp Congress started.
That's fantastic. That's absolutely unique. All these stories about the history of Congress.
And the reason why I can somehow come out with all this I actually can't believe I'm remembering all this, is because I lived through it, and that is something that stays with the person. Like every young person that goes, like in your case, the way you spoke about the Vienna Congress, I said, "Oh my God, I understand what she's talking about." It's like suddenly you're in a different world with all these people, and so and then at the beginning, just a little bit more of history. At the beginning, the congresses were every 2 years. So we had 83, and then we had 85, which was in Israel, and then we had 87, which was in Vienna. And then after that, we went for 3 years, every 3 years from then on. And we've been all over the world, including Antarctica. No. Not yet. It comes.
But Mario, who has decided actually, because when it started in Holland, the first Congress was in Holland, who has decided, or whose idea was it to bring it all over the world in the different cities?
Well, I really don't remember who came up with the idea, but the basic concept was that we have to have meetings. We have to see friends. We have to learn from each other. We have to give the opportunity to the young people to listen to each other, because you learn a lot from who's playing before or after you. Many times you learn more than at the lessons. He says, "Oh, what's happening there?" So I really can't remember, but there were, I do remember that Mr. Natra was there. There were some composers involved, and they felt the need for making something that's a world concept, not just a local community organizing. So the whole idea is, instead of coming out of a small, not small is not the right word, but
intim, like,
yeah, one person organizing or something, is actually to have a Congress that spreads everywhere, and it goes everywhere. And so far it has. I mean, it's quite extraordinary.
I just want, Maria, I don't know if you hear me still. Do you think that there is an option and chance to see all the programs from all the congresses from the past, or does it exist? Does anybody
I have them. I have them here.
All of them?
All of them.
Wow. This is absolutely unique.
Because I've been in all of them.
Well,
you know, we've been, so after Vienna, it was Holland, Israel, Austria, Vienna, and then we had France, Paris, Denmark, Copenhagen. Then it went to Tacoma, Seattle, in the US, the first time in the US. First and only time, actually. And then Prague, your Congress, 99. And then Geneva, Switzerland, Dublin, Ireland, Amsterdam, back in Holland, Vancouver, British Columbia. And then after that, it stayed away from Europe for a few years, because after Vancouver, it was Sydney in Australia, Hong Kong, and this year we would have been in Cardiff, but things were
above us, yeah.
Yes,
but we will certainly, next year, we should not forget that we will meet all of us in Cardiff. And anybody who could not come maybe this year, now it happens that can come next year. So it's something worse for good, I'm very sure. And Mario, tell me about your very beginning. How did you come to the harp? Because you are a man, and everybody is asking me, do the men play the harp? There's few men, now it's more, but you are one of those exceptional who started to play the harp. How did you come?
Well, the image itself, it didn't play into my background or development, because as I was growing up, there were very few harpists in Lisbon. I was born in Lisbon, and at the conservatory, like many harpists, I started playing piano, you know, and it was a little bit later that you saw. There were not very many harp students, but there was actually a male student that eventually was the harpist with the symphony, and he was a very good harpist and played very well. And we were about almost the same age, but I started a little bit later. But there was a kind of a connection with a friend of the family that was a musician, and then the harp teacher, and I can't quite remember. And she suddenly said, "Young man, come here, come hither. Would you like to play the harp?" This is true. She seduced me. I'm making it up a little bit, but anyway. It's a good story.
We have you in our community.
Yeah. Well, and it changed my life, of course, you know, there's no doubt about it. Because I knew I would be in music, because I never thought of being anything else as a musician. Never had it since I was a child. But on the other hand, you know, I landed on an instrument that really fit me and feels comfortable, and you can speak with it and express yourself, and those are things that you have to know. It's inside of you or it isn't, right?
Absolutely. Maria, so how old have you been?
Well, I was already, when I started harp, I was, I think, around 15 years old. Yeah.
Mhm.
I was
Mhm.
really, I didn't.
You played on the normal big harp already.
Right. I started, there were no small harps in those days. And, you
Mhm.
know, you started on the big harp anyway. And of course, like you talked before with, it was ARs, you know, that's the harp I started with.
But
However, it was very interesting. The conservatory had a Lyon and Healy 23 in the early 60s. And I that's where I played the, you know, the auditions or exams or something. I played on the big 23.
wow.
And but the little ARs, I still do remember that you cannot reproduce the extraordinary sound when you do an Alberti bass with your left hand on an AR. Suddenly it's a revelation what all those notes speak instead of going blah, 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 they speak clearly. And on a big harp, it's a little harder to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Do you agree with me? Do you agree on that?
Absolutely, because of course I was starting also an Erard because my mother did not have any other harp, so very old Erard harp, and I absolutely agree with it. It's totally true. Yeah, and you came also from the family of musicians because when you said that you were thinking not to do anything else.
No,
No,
no musicians.
absolutely amazing. That's wonderful.
It was an angel that came to me at night. No, I'm kidding.
But we can believe it because otherwise you would not do.
Okay, outside of kidding, can I say something that's a little weird? I do have in the back of my mind the memory of the first sounds of a piano, and especially the first sounds that I hear of a harp. And they're there.
Mhm. So when you
And
did the
yeah,
harp the first time, it was when you were about this 10, 14 years old?
oh
Or?
yeah, I was younger when I heard those sounds,
Mhm.
and also a little bit at that time. I also, speaking of male harpists, I this was the time of Zabaleta, Nicanor Zabaleta, and he used to actually play almost every year in the concerts in Lisbon.
Mhm.
So I did hear a lot of repertoire. You know, I remember him playing the Handel and playing the Rodrigo, and I think Baldieu also with the orchestra when he would come. And so those were things. Somehow the image of um, it, everything fit. You know, everything was all right. Being a male and playing the harp,
Mhm.
and of that sort.
And Maria, it would interest me, maybe the people also, what kind of school did you learn in Lisbon? What
You
kind
mean harp school?
of? Mhm.
Well, let me put it this way. My teacher, she was a wonderful musician. She was the orchestra harpist in Lisbon. So,
Mhm.
and she had wonderful experience. I think what she taught me was all actually very good about
Mhm.
the technical aspect. And the text that I used was the Renier. All the exercises I did, I was growing up, was Renier exercises, and I still have that book in French with me.
Mhm.
Yeah. So she didn't study. She never went to France to study with Renier, but she spoke about it, and she somehow had a knowledge of it, of certain things that, and definitely the book was there, and we did the exercises from that, and in a way, she was concerned with how well do you sound as a musician,
That's very
which is good. Which I think that's the most important thing.
absolutely. And Maria, because you are now in United States, how it comes that from Portuguese you came all over the ocean to be in
Well,
a different continent?
the pirates came and kidnapped me.
Some harpist kidnapped you.
No, I was kind of lucky. In a sense, I applied for scholarships and all that, and I got a Fulbright scholarship to come and study in the U.S. at Eastman, which was a very good. Eastman is a very good school, and it was a wonderful experience, and I got a master's there, and I started with Eileen Malone. Eileen had a very good schooling. She had studied with Grandjani and also with Pierre Jamais, no, not Pierre Jamais, Tournier, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
She goes that far back, yeah. So she started with Tournier in France. So she had a lot of knowledge, and she was a very good teacher and very strict, but in the good sense. If you didn't play well, she would say, well, you didn't play well. Let's hope you play better next time.
I think that at that time, the teachers could say these words and they were still accepted by the students, right?
Right, yeah, now things change a little. Yeah, in fact, I think the teachers felt that's how you should do it, because you were not there to kind of pamper them, as they say in English, it's to really give them knowledge, real knowledge.
Indeed. And you stayed after the studies you based in the United States already.
Yes, I was lucky. I really, at that time, in the back of my mind, I really didn't want to go back to Portugal because I had seen other environments of music, and I wanted to be in a place where I could make the best music I could. And I could make good music in Portugal too. There are wonderful musicians there and all that, but somehow the whole environment was a little bit different. I think now it's quite different, but we're talking about 50 years ago. And so there was an opening in a college not too far from where I studied, in Rochester, which is a city in New York State, but in the north. I'm now in New York State on the west of the state. And I'm actually living a very beautiful landscape and atmosphere, which is by one of the Great Lakes. I live by the Erie Lake. And I don't know if you've seen the Great Lakes, but when you get there, you think that you're by the sea because they're really very large, and so it's a very nice atmosphere. It does snow in the winter, but nevertheless, it's a very nice place. And so I got that position, which, in terms of, just to clarify things about teaching in America, nowadays the positions for harp are very rare, and they're usually all just part-time, because you don't have usually 15, 20 students in harp. The only person that had that was Suzanne McDonald, which is amazing. And but I was able to get a full-time position, which allowed me the full salary type of, but I also did some other teaching. I did actually some music history teaching for many years, and I really enjoyed that because I like reading and look at all these books, and I like the history of music, things of that. So, and I stayed here, and I taught for 43 years at the college.
Wow! And now you are.
I'm retired.
The retirement too early, I'm sure.
Yes, I have to say the first 2 or 3 years were difficult. Somehow you don't have the place to go, which is, I think, important if you love it, and I did. So that's.
So, what are your days now like?
Well, I still play the old lady over there, and I'm always looking and trying to. I had a few projects for this fall, but now I don't know what's going to happen. But I do have some new, but the only thing that I'm interested in now is, I always did, but now more than ever, is just new pieces that are coming out. So I actually received a piece from Sergio Natra. You know, Sergio Natra is over 95 or 96, and he wrote a piece 2 years ago. It's called Ode to the Harp. And it's a very interesting piece. It's well written, and so I'm working on that. And an old student wrote a piece and dedicated to me, and I have that. And some other composers like Kurek. Kurek wrote a piece recently, which I'm playing. So I keep a few pieces in fingers, or try to, and that's what I'm interested in, in continuing to play. And I do exercises every day. Young people, play your exercises every day.
Indeed, yes.
And be relaxed, no tension.
Absolutely true. It's very interesting how really I maybe can say that the old generation, me as well, because from who my mother was like, she gave me really very, she was already older, so I was 2 generations younger than my mother, so it was like that she was already grown in the old generation, and she educated me that way. So I felt like when I see the young generation, how they want everything to be very fast now, they have absolutely no ground. That makes me somehow stressed for them, because I know without the ground, the house will not stay. And that's exactly what you are saying. Many people said that every people were really playing the exercises, scales, etudes. That's what is the main important. I am doing the etudes all the time, even in these days. It's all the time very important, and more important than anything else.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Totally agree. And Mario.
Also, don't forget to tune your harp every day.
Another topic, exactly. And Mario, you were mentioning Michael Kurek. You impressed him also, and actually maybe commissioned, or I don't know how was it, but because you mentioned also the Congress in Prague, you were here. I invited you to perform at the Spanish Hall, the Kurek concerto for the harp. How was it? Was it for you written, that I know, but how like it came that he wrote the concerto for you?
Well, first of all, and before I forget, Jana, I don't want to forget to mention this. The way you organized your Congress and what you actually put for everybody to see, you, I think, are the only person that I know that organized a concert for male soloists only. And you did that in one of the most extraordinary places in Prague. And Prague is full of extraordinary places. But this hall is it a castle or a palace? It's up on the hill. It was an extraordinary experience. Just actually being there and playing there and having all the audience. And I think all of us that played were very thankful, very overcome by the honor of playing over there. It's something you don't forget, So wonderful idea. Like what's happening now, it's a wonderful idea, Jana. Really wonderful. And so
I was so happy to have you. I was going through the program of the Prague Congress as well, to really always, I have of course this Congress I have in my book and in my head very clearly, but I was going through all the programs there, and I admire so much that you were able to come and to be with us here as well. So, you brought it as well. You are incredibly prepared.
This is the program, and look how thick it is.
Yeah, and that everything was printed by myself on the little computer that time, very new, like it was everything. Yeah, but I did it exactly like now, with all my love and really all my pleasure for making the people happy. So,
Actually, I also do remember from the Congress that you were able to gather several orchestras, and we heard an extraordinary large number of concerti, which is difficult and rare on the harp. And we really heard all these pieces there, and in great places, and with wonderful orchestras. And so that, thank you. It's really, that's one of the great things also about the Congress, is that there are different things from everywhere, and some of them just they have things that you don't forget.
Absolutely. Every Congress brings something totally different, and also the atmosphere of every country and every city, it's so unique, and it really brings totally different feelings, and memories are always the most beautiful. Mario, have you planned in Cardiff to perform as well?
No, I don't. You're asking me if I have something planned?
Yes.
No, I don't. Maybe some other time.
Well, maybe I ask you if you were planning to perform in Cardiff at the Congress, or if you were just going to visit it as a board.
Yeah, I was just going to visit. No, I didn't present any program, because I've been doing usually just one or two little pieces in a lot of congresses, and there's a lot of young people that need to actually. That's actually more important to them.
But you should not be missed there. You have to come. You have to be there. And Mario, I was talking too much, and I forgot to let you speak about this concerto of Mr. Kurek.
Oh, yes. Well, Michael's relationship with me goes back a while, because Michael taught here at Fredonia quite a while back. I would say like almost 30 years ago. He came in actually to fill for just 1 year. He was teaching composition. And at that time, he was writing a piece for harp and alto, viola. Viola is in Europe mostly. And so our relationship started there. And then I played that piece for the first time, and actually I played that piece in Paris.
I see.
Right, for the Congress in Paris, for viola and harp. It's a sonata. And then later on, he wanted to write a concerto, and started to write a concerto. And he actually made two versions of it. He made a version with the chamber orchestra only, a small orchestra. And then he also made the version that we heard in Prague with the large orchestra and all. And so he was interested in that. And more recently, he wrote a really good piece for cello and harp called Serenade, really good piece. And he wrote a solo piece for harp, also in the past 5 years. And that's a piece that I also played all these pieces, and actually some harpists are now playing them, and he writes really quite well, and it makes sense. So it's nice, I'm about to propose something to him. I said, I'm thinking to propose to him and say, have you thought of the combination, or have you ever heard the combination of flute, alto, and harp? It's already there. You don't need to hire musicians. We all have a trio somewhere. And because actually I do think that his sensibility will be, because he's writing now more and more tonal music and more kind of melodious things based on almost popular sounds type of thing. So
wonderful.
Yeah.
Push him to do so. Push him to write as many music as it's possible, for sure.
Yeah.
Do you know his actually background? Because his name Kurek, honestly, I'm of course national now thinking, but it's like the Czech name somehow. Does he?
Yeah, absolutely. No, we talked about. Yeah, I mean, his grandparents or something. They're from the Czech country, Czech Republic. Yeah.
It sounds like that. Yeah.
Yeah. But I don't think he knows the language or anything like. I think when we had the Congress, he was there for a while. I mean, he came in early and he went to visit with his wife and I think he has 2 children and so no, I do remember that he spent some time there and he was really seeing. Yeah, because it's a Czech number. It's a Czech name.
Name.
Yeah.
And Mario, now in these days when we are all locked down, are you having some hobby which you are now doing during these days, or what is your day look like now?
I'm a very boring person. The only hobby I have is music. And the truth is I'm very happy with it. My other hobby, if one could say that, is that I read a lot of books. And that gives me something back. I'm not a person that makes things with their hands, and I don't paint houses, or I don't know. I don't fix things in the house. I always call someone. And no, just reading and music. That's what I do even when I'm in. And I do go out to do my shopping, and because fortunately this place, I think I mentioned this earlier, there is a problem everywhere. You have to be careful. Always wear my gloves, always wear my mask. But it isn't something that's horrendous here. I think there's only been 3 deaths related to in this county, the county. In Buffalo, I'm not too far from a large city, which is Buffalo. Buffalo has had quite a lot.
Well, please take care and stay safe, Mario, because we all need to be really very careful about being healthy. That's the most important. And Mario, tell me what is in the plan for the autumn. We hope that everything will be open again, hopefully. So is there any of your plan to do new music, to learn, to present, or what's something coming on?
I had some plans for the fall because I was going to go to Portugal and do a few things there, but I don't know. You can't make plans now, even in about 4 or 5 months. I always like to travel because I also have done a lot of traveling and going here and there, but so I don't know exactly what's happening. But I wanted to mention one thing. I've been thinking about what we're doing now and what you organized and brought this up. This is going to be a way of communicating for the future. I think it's going to mark us, all of us around the world, how we living from now on. And one way of, I don't know, I know nothing. I'm just a person that lives normally. But what we're doing now is we're going to do this more and more. And even meetings, I don't know about the meetings, what's going to happen with meetings. And a lot of it might be a combination of people in place and people outside through internet, all sorts of things. It's a totally different world. I think this is going to change us as a species almost.
It almost starts like some science fiction films and movies. When we have seen that they are really communicating only through that, and they are just not in present. So.
Yeah, I actually think if an extraterrestrial would come down to a big city now and would see all of us with a mask, they would say, "Oh, these people are very weird. I can't make them up. I'm leaving." We all wear masks.
It's kind of fashion now, right?
Yes, a new fashion. Yes.
Indeed. Mario, it was so really lovely to have you with us today. You are amazing. All these memories are incredibly, really such a treasure for everyone. And I wish that you can speak about also competitions, because you were at the competitions very often, also in the juries. And
Yeah.
do you have any memories, because you were in most of the competitions in the juries from the beginning already? So if you can just tell a little bit about these experiences as well.
Oh, in general, what I would like to say is that I'm so happy, so feel so good about the level of playing of young harpists these days in the world. You know, their base, the way they approach playing the harp is, it seems to be all right. They are in the right direction, in the right step. I still remember, especially in the early harp weeks, we were all very happy if we were able to play a piece from beginning to end without falling apart or not missing quite a lot of wrong notes. And that doesn't seem to exist anymore, you know. I think it's the way people are trained, and trained both physically and up here. How you're going to approach making music, and this is very, and that I'm very happy to see, and yeah, and so no, I the competition we were at, it was the level was. The other thing is that there suddenly aren't really big stars because they're all really doing well. But that's better for all of us.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah,
It's true that the level went really very high, and it's a lot of great harpists now in these
yes,
days.
yeah, it's amazing. It's really, especially having grown up the year where I did. I mean, it's a wonderful experience. Yeah, great. Really grateful to listen to the young people.
Indeed. And only, I don't want to take your time, but we are happy to have you, and I would love to talk to you as long as you can. So you are welcome to speak as many as information you can share and want to share with us. I just wanted to ask already at the very beginning when you were talking about Fia, because she's really such an icon for not only congresses, but for many harpists, as she was not only as a harpist, but as a person. Did she has any children or someone who is, no, she was really involved and totally dedicated to the instrument and to the harp?
She was married
Mm-hmm.
at one time, and you know, I don't know about her private life, but she didn't have any children, and I don't know if she had them and they, you know, they passed. She never mentioned anything like that.
No, just only pity, because if such a person doesn't have the children, the row is cut, and that's a pity. So that it would be wonderful to know if she had some children who can continue, maybe that there are musicians as well.
Yeah. I think the people in Holland have, you know, there is a Vierbergout fund, and they feel a need to keep presenting her name. And of course, with the World Harp Congress, she's a founding member. She's the founder of the Congress. I mean, and she is, because she did the Harp Weeks for 20 years on her own, basically.
And after Fia, there was Anne Stockton, right? After Fia,
right. Anne Stockton was the very first chairman of the board. So we didn't have presidents or something. We decided that it would be, shall we say, more equitable if we had board members and the chairman of the board, because the decisions were to be taken by a group of people, not by one person. And it's been working this way and very well for all these times. And so it was Anne Stockton, And then
Pat Worcester.
Patricia was a Pat Worcester.
Wow.
And then now is Kathy Kenzel.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually someone else will become and continue, let's hope. And but these are uncertain times about what's happening and where we're going. And,
so let's hope that the Congress can still continue, and next year that we will really meet, that nothing wrong comes again, so that we will not be again destroyed of all the communications, present communication. And I wish you really, Mario, all my best. It was so wonderful as always to be with you, to have you for our 1 hour and 10 minutes.
Yes. Oh my goodness.
It flies so fast, really, when you have so many things and stories to talk about. So I thank you really very much and wish you good health, stay safe, and I'm really looking forward to see you next year in Cardiff, as well as everybody else. And I invite now very strongly to see Mario to announce the Congress at the Third World Harp Congress in Vienna, the electronic memory. No, it was electronic harp, the Salvi one, right?
It was memory harp.
It was the memory harp. So you will see the very special concert. And if anybody recognized who was playing on the harp, I would be very thankful, as it has not been mentioned in the program. So I could not introduce the harpist there. So if anybody wants to look at it now and can immediately write into the comment the name of the harpist, we will be all very thankful. And I would love, again, very thanks to Mario FALCAO today, our wonderful guest from United States, and who accepted my invitation and was with us today. And I am really looking forward to see you tomorrow. We will have 2 very special guests. In the afternoon at 2 o'clock, we will have Sarah O'Brien, and in the evening, we will have Isabel Perrin. So new generation of the harps and very interesting stories again. So don't miss it. And I'm looking forward to see you again. All my best, Mario, and thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Jana. Thank you. Wonderful work.
Thank you very much for everything.